This is from Ken Klippenstein, who writes that the FBI is readying a new war on trans people because there was already a war on trans people by the extremist far right, but this is a new one. Apparently, 2 national security officials have told Klippenstein that they're going to designate transgender people as violent extremists because of what happened to Charlie Kirk. So I'm going to get into this bit more, but if people are like, wait, what? It wasn't a trans person who killed Charlie Kirk, you are correct. And I don't have all I don't know that anybody other than the so-called authorities do, but the person who shot Charlie Kirk had apparently was friends with somebody who was trans and apparently like wrote on the bullet something about trans folks. To me, it seemed like somebody, a bit like Dick Cheney, has a gay daughter, so now therefore thinks being gay is okay. It felt to me like this person had a trans friend or significant other. I don't know what their specific relationship was, and therefore was pissed, rightfully so, at the absolute insane terroristic drivel being pushed by people like Kirk. Now, whether that's really what made him shoot him or not, I don't know. But somehow this was involved in it. Now, the shooter, again, not trans, cis white dude, really can't stress this enough. If you look at the history of shooters in this country, mass and otherwise, predominantly white cis dudes. So this is the little nudge, right? This is the little nudge that the FBI wanted in order to go after trans people in new and dystopian ways. The argument, of course, is what the argument has always been, as Pam Bondi, Attorney General, pointed out. They're putting this crazy ideology in our schools, a cult of gender ideology, which gender is a construct like race or whatever. You don't have to be a scientist to know that. You might need to read some science, but this is another one of those episodes of every accusation is an admission. If we're talking about crazy ideologies that they're putting in our schools, what about the crazy ideology that America is the best country in the world? Or sorry, the United States. We call it America. That's another crazy ideology. What about this idea that we're a democracy or a republic? Or that like we have free speech? Like, what about these crazy ideologies that are in our schools? I'd like to do something about that, because that shit is just as much a lie as, you know, whatever fluff that that people like Fox News and MSNBC and all of these people put out there. It's historical fluff, right? It's historical lies, as opposed to what these people do and call it journalism. But I mean, we are just marinating in this horrific stew of lies, and then they're going after people who are like, yeah, I'm just living proof that gender is a construct, and I guess you hate me for that. A senior intelligence official told Ken Klippenstein, he writes, that they are cynically targeting trans people because the shooter's lover was trans. Again, I don't know that. I can't corroborate that, but that's what the senior intelligence official told Ken. And he said, quote, the administration has convinced itself that the Charlie Kirk murder exposes some dark conspiracy. You know what I think is, again, it's so funny. It's like these people love to talk about like the conspiracies, like, oh, it's a trans conspiracy. And I remember back in the day, comedian Lewis Black had a great bit about like the gay conspiracy, like they're trying to turn you gay. And it's like, it's so dumb, right? Because when you are so privileged, when life is so good for you, people basically saying, hi, I'd like to be treated like a human, that, oh my God, that feels like oppression to you because A, you're so privileged, and B, you have this idea in your head that it's like a piece of pie. And if they get some equality, if they get some access to basic human rights, like being recognized as a human being, then that somehow affects you negatively, which is, you know, the argument that a lot of people have against trans people, especially trans women. Like, oh, that's not real women. We've fought so hard as women for our rights, and if they get some, we won't have any anymore. Like, That's not how rights work. It's not a pie, okay? It's a propagandization that makes you think that, right? That make you think that, oh my gosh, if they get some, then I lose some, which is of course the propaganda that drives the idea that, immigrants are taking you jobs, or, DEI is the problem, as opposed to corporate greed and capitalism and white supremacy, right? It's these mentalities that get them to think like, oh my gosh, if we treat trans people like human beings, then we're going to lose some of our rights. Also, just going to say that a lot of cis people have, especially on the right, are just very creeped out and have like these, I want to say, like dystopian erotic ideas about LGBTQ folks. And like that's their problem, right? Just like white supremacy and racism is a white people problem. Like that's really your issue. And it's like the idea that like people who always say that, oh, LGBTQ folks molest kids, and then you always end up seeing like child pornography on some right-wing douche canoe's laptop. It's like, well, thou doth protest too much. We see this like need for some kind of dark conspiracy, when in reality, it's like people just want to be human beings, okay? They want to be treated like human beings and be able to like garden and shit, and like love who they want to love and read books, read books where they see themselves, right? Speaking of like banning books and things like that, especially when, particularly with LGBTQ youth, mental health is incredibly strained. And to have books and places like that where you see like a mirror of yourself is so important. And they're banning those books, right? Also, Banned Books Week is coming up. If y'all want to check that out, you can go to the Banned Books website. I think the theme this year is make 1984 fiction again, which, yeah, looks like we got ourselves a reader. Yes, love Bill Hicks. The powers that be are blaming the radical left for this shooting, which I'm laughing because there's so much to cry about. It's just like the radical left, again, just wants people to be able to have human rights. And you're talking about a right winger who was shot by a guy who grew up in right wingdom. I don't know specifically about his political ideologies, but just judging by his interest in weaponry and his upbringing, I'm going to say that he had a lot of right wing ideas around him in a place that is run by a right-wing mayor and a state that has a right-wing governor. It's like, you're really desperately trying to blame this on the left, and the left's over here like, I did what? Which is always the case, right? And we see this going back to, Haymarket, right? Like the Haymarket affair. Oh, well, it's the anarchists. And then they hang people for, inciting violence, when in reality it was the police. So this is, again, historically speaking, this is what the US does, right? So the FBI has a new threat category, which kind of love this name, nihilistic violent extremists, which actually sounds like a band name. And I'm wondering if anybody's like, does anybody have a band that they could start and call it that? Because I love this name. And this is actually a kind of rebrand of the Biden era label, which was anti-authority, anti-government violent extremists, codename Agave, which was, I guess it was a little too verbose. So maybe they shrunk it down. I'm not sure. Maybe these folks have a harder time with those multiple syllables. They're trying to say that these folks are nihilistic, violent extremists. And again, I think this is one of those moments where like, you keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. Nihilistic does not mean that you want people to have basic human rights. That's not what it means. This is also like in the duh category, but it's, I think, pertinent to point out. The National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism came out with the duh point that no, there's no evidence of rising LGBTQ plus violent extremism or trans terrorism. If you wanted to show anyone a report that shows that just echoes reality, feel free to send them to this program that studies terrorism, like actual terrorism, not just like kids who want to exist.